Hello everybody. So in last week's video I showed how I made some dado cuts on the side panels here so that the shelves could fit snugly in. I talked about in the intro video why I decided to do that, and here I have my shelf. Actually, I guess it goes like this. Shelf here, I've already glued and brad nailed the edges or the side panels to the shelves here, so this is all fixed in place. And I used this boss stitch brad nailer. It's about 18 gauge, and I used about inch long brad nails to pull these sides in. Now, not all the dados I made were clean. Some had some tear out on the back side, but that's not a problem because today what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to add some edge banding. Now, people who are familiar with edge banding might look at this and say this is some really thick stuff, which it really is. A lot of times edge banding is real thin, about 32nd of an inch, and just really thin, almost a veneer just to cover some composites, plies or something like that, or some bad grain or something like that. But with my oak, I wanted a little bit more durability to it. I know I'm going to be putting some heavy things on these shelves, and I want to make sure that when I'm over a period of time when I'm putting stuff on the shelves, it's not going to flake away or pull up the edge banding. So I chose for about 3/16 to about maybe a little bit less than 1/4 of an inch edge banding here. And what I did is I actually had a thick stock that I planed down to the thickness of these pieces, and then I ripped it on the table saw to 1/4 of an inch. Then again, I took it back to the planer and planed down to about 3/16 or so. And the reason I planed it after I ripped it was because sometimes when you're cutting on the table saw, you can actually get some marks, especially thin material, marks from the blade when the boards want to either move into or away from the blade, get marks. And I really wanted to limit the amount of gaps when I hit or tack this down. So I have my two side pieces, which are about 5/8 thick, and then I've got a few of these pieces that go on my shelves, about 1/2 inch thick. And again, I chose this because I wanted to hide the dados. It has a clean feel to it. Plus, it gives me a 1/4 of an inch extra for the depth of my shelf. So I'm going to put glue on this edge, and actually, you know what? I see there's a little bit of some dried glue, so I'm going to take this 100 grit sandpaper. It's flat. And just sand that, trying to get that down. I don't want any type of bumps or anything on here, because if I have raised dried glue and I try to attach this down, it's gonna you're gonna be able to see it from the edge. I'm trying to make this as seamless as possible. Do be careful running your hand across oak. It's very splintery sometimes, and you can get, I nicked myself earlier with a splinter. So anyways, I'm gonna put some glue down and use a finish nailer. And this finish nailer, you probably can't see in here, but if you Google a finish nailer, or you search a finish nailer opposed to a brad nailer or a finish nailer, the pins are about a 32nd, even smaller. And this brad nailer, they're about a 1/16, well, 18 gauge, you can look that up, in thickness. So this finish nailer or pin nailer will leave a really, really small hole. And again, with this oak, since it's porous, it's going to hide with the grain really well. So I'm going to do the edges of the side panels first, and then come back and use these pieces. Now, if I do this all in one glue up and pin, or I guess pin up, pinned or whatever, then I can actually move the edge panels back and forth as I need to make sure there's no seams between the shelf panels and the edges. So I cut these a little bit longer so that when I come, or after I pin these, I can actually come back and use a finish saw and cut them flush. So I'm just gonna, again, I wanna make sure my hand is far away from, or not necessarily far away, but clear from the length of the nail so that if it shoots out at an angle, it's not gonna hit my hand. glue squeeze out, always good to have some paper towels on hand. I'm actually just going to flip this. And now these pieces should fit nice and perfectly down in there. Now I did cut with these ones. I made my shelf edge banding just a little thinner. I kind of like that slightly recessed feel in the shelf. I'm going to go ahead and start gluing those in. Now what I'm doing here is I'm looking to make sure that there's no tear out at the ends here. Now on this piece there is, so opposed to having that be revealed up, I'm going to flip it over and push it down. That way it's kind of hidden. I like to try to get up as much glue when it's wet as possible. Kind of a pain sometimes when it dries and you try to get it up on these really interior kind of corner areas. They can pull out some of the grain of the wood. Now as I'm putting glue on the edge here, I also try to put it on this panel piece right there so it gets a little bit of the end grain on there. It's a little too much glue. Now, I can see right here I have a little bit of a gap. That's probably because when I was putting this banding down, either the banding itself was, warped, or I just, pulled it too far to the side. So what I want to do, and you could probably use tape for this if you wanted. So I'm going to clamp that real lightly. Now it's important not to have too much pressure here, because if I apply too much pressure with this clamp, it'll actually pull this edge banding up and you'll have a seam, a gap right down there. So I'm trying to make sure I don't get too much of that up. And I can always just double check by looking right at the edge here. Looks pretty good. 2 more to go. We'll go ahead and do this last one at the same time. So now I'm going to wait for this to dry. Move things out of the way. I'm going to wait for this to dry for just a little bit, and then I'm going to come back. I really want to make sure that these edges are nice and secure, so I'll probably wait a day until I trim these off. But I might lightly sand some of the parts. Kind of want to get some of that wood glue and sawdust into these little pinholes if possible. If not, then when I sand and finish it, it'll clear it up. But I'm not too worried. I'm looking for more function over aesthetics. You know, durability of this edge banding is going to be key. So thank you for watching this video. And next week I'm going to talk about the finishing technique.